and gentlemen, you found us. This is the Dreamers Live podcast, live from the Lair at the Pioneer Dream Studios.
Yes.
And we're so thrilled you're here. Hi.
Hi.
And this is episode 003. And today's episode is entitled Getting Unstuck.
I like it.
Unstuck. So you are an artist, and as we've talked about before, you're a musician and a woman of many, many talents.
Oh, that's so nice of you. What?
Are there moments in your life where you find yourself a little stuck?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you talk about like life in general or creatively?
Life in general, or in the arts, or in your creative exploits?
Yeah, if I had to, I think everybody feels stuck sometimes. I've had like seasons of my life that I feel like for a couple of years I felt stuckish.
Yeah.
When I talk about creativity and certain things. And then in my maybe personal life or life with relationships, I feel like at least a couple times a year, I will hit a certain point. Yeah. Not everybody is geared. You and I we have some differences, but we also have some similarities personality-wise. I don't know that everybody is geared for change as much as we are. We sort of thrive on it. Yeah. So I think I may go through that more than a lot of people, but I think a couple times a year for sure, I'll hit a point where I'm stuck.
I would describe it as feeling like somehow your life is stuck, or your life is on pause, and yet the world is continuing to spin. So you feel this sense of being trapped. Meanwhile, other things are passing you by. So while your personal life is stuck, everything else is continuing to move past you.
Well, and I think probably when you're feeling, for me anyway, when I'm feeling stuck, I tend to probably notice, or it seems like everybody else around me is getting forward motion. Yeah. And, I'm trying not to be envious, but I'm like, man, I'm doing the same thing. It is Tuesday again, and they're having all these successes and all these new creative ideas, and I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah, there are very few things that are more frustrating than when you're in this moment of feeling stuck. Then there are bumping into people who are suddenly energetic and inspired and continue to move forward and feel like their dreams are constantly happening. Yeah. And you feel like everything is great. So wanted to talk maybe just a minute about what you do to get unstuck, what we can do in those moments. I think the reality of it is, first of all, that stuck happens.
I like that.
We're always, life comes in these little cycles and seasons. And so there are moments where it feels like there's kind of creative outpouring and you can't really even contain it all. So maybe you have too many things happening at one time. Sure. And then there are quiet seasons, and then there are these kind of stuck seasons. And so maybe we could encourage each other a little bit in this moment and talk a little bit about what we do to try and get unstuck when it's possible. So are there things that you do when you find yourself in that space?
I think I was just thinking about this morning when you told me what we were going to chat about. I think the tough part about being stuck is you feel very slothy. Like, is that a word?
Yes. Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
there's not a lot of inspiration. There's not a lot of motivation, to work out, to eat right, to call your mom, or, whatever it is, those things that you need to do. And so you feel like your feet are glued to the ground. Right. And so for me, a lot of times what can help break that pattern, some of it is just a season that I have to maybe let pass, but there are some forward motions that I can take, but it's the time you don't feel like doing it at all.
Right. There's a lethargy that kind of sets in.
Yes, lethargy is a good word. And I do love sloths. No offense to the sloths. They're so cute. And I imagine them wearing little sweaters, and I don't know why. And they're cozy sweaters. But that's the time for me that sometimes breaking up a pattern, whether it's a negative pattern or just a sameness pattern, the slightest change can give impetus to some more change. Right. I don't know that you can always get yourself out of being stuck, but there are times where I feel like there are things I can do. I don't feel like it, but if I'll take one little step, it might make way for another. Right. What about you?
Yeah, I think, like you say, I'm prone to want change frequently. Yes. And I don't always like. I think there's some things that happened early on in our career together that we share, where we got into some projects and into some long-term things and felt very trapped, not stuck, but just trapped in those projects. So I get a little hyper about that sense of being trapped and stuff. So I look for change pretty frequently.
Yeah.
Even though there are a lot of traditions and funny things personally that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be trapped in so when it comes on and there's a project and it might be a long-term project.
Yeah.
Whether it's personally, whether it's our projects that we do creatively on our own or for a client, I start to hyperventilate a little bit.
Yeah,
so,
you do. You get the look of the tuna.
Yeah.
That's like where you're like, ooh.
So I like change a lot, but I think part of it is sometimes when the very first thing that I tend to do when I get into a place where I feel trapped, and we trust each other in this conversation a lot, so it's easier to do, but I like to start by just putting everything on the table. If you've been in that season for a couple of months now, I like to sit down, sometimes metaphorically, sometimes physically, and just say, okay, let's put everything on the table. What if we...
Like everything?
Everything. Well, what if we move? What if we freshen our resumes and go work for somebody else?
Okay.
What if we go back to school? What if we do this, and this? And the very act of putting everything out there and not protecting anything somehow gives me the freedom to not feel trapped in the stuckness, but then also sometimes generate some ideas. Maybe we could go and work in a different city and we've done that. So we've done projects where we've gone to another city because of what we do. We can pretty much do it anywhere.
Yeah.
So we've gone and rented a home or something like that in a place for a month or for a couple of months and done our work there and kind of concentrated on projects for there. And that's been really, that's really generated a lot for us. So I think the whole idea of saying, if we put everything on the table, it's not that you're going to do that. You're not going to leave your family.
Are you going to put me on the table?
You've been on the table. So I just didn't mention that. But in my mind, you were on the table. No.
Sure.
No, of course not. No, but I think there's a freedom in doing that to say, oh, what if we, why couldn't I go back to school?
Yeah.
Why couldn't I take this other job? Why shouldn't I consider doing this? Doesn't mean you're going to do it, but sometimes in the consideration of it, there's a life that comes in just breathing that air possibility that seems to at least be restorative in some way.
Yeah, I like that. And I think sometimes even just a change of location. I mean, as simple as it cracks me up because obviously we work together and we're married.
Right.
So we spend a lot of time together, but we have separate offices within our office. But occasionally, or actually not occasionally, several times a week, if we have to talk about something that is creative or we're trying to come up with ideas or problem solving or a solution, we have to leave our office, which is the place that we pay for to work in. And go to one of several coffee shops that we sort of rotate around our little town. But sometimes just the change of location can help you feel unstuck when you're thinking about something. Just going somewhere different, seeing somebody else.
We're also very big fans of leaving. So, taking a day or taking an afternoon or taking a weekend and getting outside of those four walls to have a meeting. So like you're saying, but sometimes it takes getting to a different city. And things look a little different when you get to the other city. And you think, oh, that's a cool thing. Yeah. So there's that thing. I think there's the idea of talking with people you trust to trying to determine, is this just a quiet season? Is there something in this that I'm missing? Are there some possibilities or opportunities that I'm not considering? If I'm bumping into the same stuff over and over again, sometimes talking to another party will help in that process.
I like that. And I think that's true. We have to have those people in our lives that we could say, hey, I keep repeating this same pattern, or I keep doing this. Do you see the value in this? Is there something that I'm missing? I think it's so interesting that for all of us as humans, it's very easy for us often to see where someone else might be stuck. Right. We could, right? Yeah. But forest for the trees, is that what they say? Trees, forests? Something about forest and trees?
There's some trees and forests and something. Anyway. You can't have a forest without trees?
Yeah, I don't know. But but it's harder for us to see reasons that we are stuck in our own life. And so we have to trust outside perspective. That's tricky sometimes, but you have to know those people that really love you for who you are, that you can say, is there a reason I keep doing this? And the other thing that I was thinking about too is you and I tend to run from being stuck or feeling trapped. We don't like that. There are other types of personalities, I think, that feel a lot of comfort in the sameness of a pattern. Sure. And it certainly takes all types of people to make the world go round. I mean that sincerely. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have, engineers or architects or people that can see long projects through. Right. But when we feel like running from being stuck, I wonder what is the value sometimes of what you might call a quiet season. I'm not good at the quiet season.
No, I think, well, and that's an interesting conversation. So I think there's a moment where you kind of have to get a sense for yourself of where you are. Is this a thing of being stuck, or is this just simply a quiet season? Because we all know that's how time works. It's just there's an ebb and flow. There are things that happen in there, and the challenge is there's a moment where you might take action to get unstuck or to change something. But without that sense of what the right thing to do is in that moment, you might also be messing up a quiet season and jump into something too early, get out of something too early. And so we refer to that as the ET light. So this thing about, I don't know if anybody remembers the movie ET.
Okay, come on. Everybody remembers the movie ET.
So the extraterrestrial little ET there. And every time he is thinking about home, trying to communicate to home, comes into contact with something of his home, his little ET heart light comes on. His whole chest glows.
It's so sweet.
And so that's the way I think about it. And we have this DNA, this spiritual DNA that's in us. And so a lot of times when we're contemplating a decision and trying to get a sense of the right thing to do, I try to physically pay attention to that. What thing is glowing? What thing has shine in me when I consider it? Not just that I'm excited about it, not just that. I mean, there are 1,000 things that have different possibilities.
Yeah, so many ideas, so little time.
But there's a thing that sometimes when you're weighing two things, that you begin to feel the shine on one thing or another. Yeah. And so that takes getting quiet. Sometimes that takes getting with other people, but it's important to kind of know where you are, which season you're in. And I think the more you've been through those seasons, the more you can begin to determine this is simply just a quiet season. Yeah. It's a season of no's. Everything you consider is a no.
Nope, not that.
It's just a holding pattern. Yeah. Should I do this? No. Should I go here? No. Yeah. Just hold here. Just hold still for a minute. And sometimes that's because other pieces are being moved into place. Yeah. Other things are coming into movement, and you are where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, or maybe, and this is the part that I'm really not good at, life is a series, especially in the type of work that we do. But I think for most people where you have seasons that really are busy or really productive. And if we're in a season where we feel stuck, but it's really more a gift of some quietude. Is quietude a word?
Sure it is.
Yeah. Okay, sure. It is now. And we're not resting in that time. And then that productivity and that energy and creativity comes back in. And because we were spinning our wheels at something else, we don't have enough energy to go where the heart light is in that season.
Yes.
I have done that before. I was thinking about, do you remember a long time ago, for me, a lot of times the beginning of the year can feel that way. Like years kind of, they take off at a certain point, but sometimes that January, February, I also really enjoy it. I like to organize closets. I'm kind of a geek,
You are, yeah.
It's a pretty exciting night when you get to have a glass of wine and organize a closet. But for me, I remember round about February, there still wasn't really anything creative going on. We're working and doing some stuff. And so I was like, well, I'm going to do this thing where I help this venue host some pub music nights, and I'm just going to line it up for the spring. And, we do stuff like this a lot. And so I just did it.
I remember that.
Yeah. Yes. And there was a logo, and I had the venue, and I lined people up. And around about, March, when all the regular things that normally kick in, I had way too much going on.
Absolutely.
Because I felt stuck. And rather than probably, in hindsight, embracing the quiet season and that rest and being okay with that, I kicked myself into a gear and I made something up. And it wasn't that it was bad. It was still fun. We had music nights, but I really regretted that in March and April, having all these other things to do when the things that we really wanted to do did come to fruition later in that year. And so I think there's probably value sometimes in the quiet.
The whole conversation about seasons and that is really interesting because we've been in this kind of work for a while now. And there are a lot of things that we set out to do when we first started our company, Pioneer Dream, and we were doing film and video and music and on and on and on. And we had a lot of aspirations and a lot of dreams and a lot of projects that were kind of targets for us that we wanted to do.
It seems exhausting now.
It's tiresome even just thinking about it. Yeah. And So at some level, there are a number of those projects that did not come to fruition the way we thought they would, and only now, this far away from them, can I feel a sense of gratitude that they didn't happen, because now I know myself better. I would not have enjoyed those projects, would not have enjoyed working on that kind of work for that period of time. Then there are some of those projects that we did have an opportunity to work on, but they came to an end. And sometimes I think a stuck season, is a season where something is kind of finishing. And you and I have gotten, because we've been in it for so long, we've gotten much more comfortable with understanding and being okay with something finishing, something being done. So you work for someone, you work on something, you do a project, you do a kind of work for a long period of time, and then there's a moment where you think, it feels like this is through now. It feels like it's okay to let this go. So, most people looking at us would probably not know that we did a farmer's market for about 10 years. And it was, so we're not produce people. We, don't do a lot of farming personally.
No, but we were helping.
Yeah, but it was like a weekly
downtown
festival.
Development. It was like a street festival that helped the downtown in our city.
Yeah, it had live music and original art and had great food and on and on and on. And it was a really cool thing. So it was like a little festival that happened every Saturday morning. And we loved it, and the city loved it. And then at about year 8 or 9,
it was all volunteer, by the way.
Yeah, it was all volunteer, but it started to feel to us a little tired and a little heavy and a little burdensome. And we didn't want to let go of it, and we may have even taken it a year or two longer than maybe we probably should have.
That was my fault.
In the process of it. It was. I wasn't going to say that loud.
We'd invested so much time.
But there was a moment there where it just felt like, oh, okay, this isn't forever. This was never meant to be a life sentence. This was never meant to be a life's pursuit or goal.
And that's what it started to feel like.
And as the result, there were a lot of other things that happened in our city that kind of took the place of that had room to happen after we said, okay, the market is now quietly retiring. And so there are those moments where where something begins to feel burdensome or long, and that's a moment when we can consider. Now, raising a child might feel that way. It's not really an option for you. You've got to be wise.
You can't put your child on the table, as you were saying, but no, it's true. And I think sometimes we do get stuck in sometimes the approval of other people that come from doing things, or like seeing the good in it. There was so much good when I think about that example. There was a lot of good that happened in our city. Our downtown
when
was
you're
growing,
known for doing that, it means losing part of your identity or losing the points for doing it.
And we couldn't go to the grocery store without someone saying, there were a lot of people that complained too, trust me. But one of your mom's friends, I so appreciate what you guys do for our city and our community. And that is really hard to be like, well, we don't care about the community anymore. We don't care about the city. We're out. And
it's hard to give up, potentially a part of your identity in that, or the points that you get from doing
the
that.
Points. For sure. But there's nothing less fun than being stuck in something when you know that the light, like the ET heart light, has shifted from it.
Yes, right.
What are some things that you personally do to get unstuck?
Well,
are you proactive about it? You have.
Yeah, I think there are moments like from the standpoint of a creative person, which is, as you and I both agree, creativity is far bigger than what most people call it. The arts, or I happen to be a writer. You happen to be a musician. We happen to do film and video stuff, and our hands are in a lot of traditionally creative projects. But man, there's creativity in law work. There's creativity in landscaping. There's creativity in culinary services. All that stuff. And there's creativity in parenting. So I think that is a widespread thing. One of the things that I think we've witnessed other people do and that we have done ourselves is we will sometimes the stuckness comes in the tool. So for example, like if you are an artist and you happen to be a painter and nothing is moving you currently as a painter, sometimes it's time to put the brush down and pick up pencils or pick up pastels or pick up sculpting or some other thing, because the very change of the physicality of what you're doing sometimes will break you into something else.
To change the medium, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah, that's so true.
And I've told this story about you, several times, but you and Evangeline just recently did a guitar class. Both of you guys, have been playing piano since you were old enough to push down keys. And but I've witnessed you play differently and with a different aesthetic. I think by changing an instrument, like what you write on guitar, how you play, or what comes out of you, or even your sensibility is different on guitar than it is on piano.
Yeah.
And so I see that, a change of tool. The conversation is the same, even if the language is a little different in that process.
Yeah, and that's true. I'm really still a very bad guitar player, but for me, even just the freedom, because I have played piano for so long, even sometimes the creative thing that you love, you can feel stuck in that.
Right.
And so just changing the tool a little bit, or just playing guitar for fun and not trying to write or be inspired, but can open up a whole new window. It's the same as going to a coffee shop when you're not getting any ideas at your office, or that type of thing. You're sort of making a different path to try.
And it is interesting, I think, because I think even small changes, I think change begets change. So, taking a different route to work or to wherever you go, or choosing a weekend to not drink and
that
see where
sounds sad.
It does sound sad,
but
no, but it just brings, or I think about like all those little things, choosing maybe for a week to not turn on the TV and just see what happens in a night when you're not on TV, or see what happens if you leave your phone by the front door and you're not there with it at night to scroll and to do that kind of stuff. And because we get into these little habits and patterns, which can be a little life sucking, where you get home and you feel like, okay, this is how I detox, or this is how I relax, or this is how I get mindless entertainment. I just veg and scroll.
Sure.
So sometimes changing a handful of those things can really be helpful, and just the mere fact of doing 2 or 3 of those things can beget more change, can bring in more more openness in our process, and so that's a really interesting way to do small things that can produce change in our lives.
Yeah, I like it. Remember the other night when we were sitting down to watch a little bit of TV. We really honestly don't watch a ton of TV. We don't have a lot of time for it, but we have kind of a little routine with our daughter where after we eat dinner, we'll watch. We have these little, a funny sitcom that we'll watch.
Right.
And we watch a little bit of usually the Fallon monologue.
Right.
Don't judge, okay? Anyway, and you sat in my place on the couch the other night, and I was like, why are you in my place on the couch?
Yeah.
And you said, because I just want to try sitting over here.
and
I
it was
like,
amazing.
Yes, and it actually revolutionized everything.
And I slept good that night, so maybe that was all part of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
But maybe we can just encourage each other if we have relationships or areas. Maybe we'll leave from here and write down. I know in our relationship there are times when we have felt stuck, and it's often because we haven't made any time to just go hang out and not be working or parenting or all that kind of stuff. But if you make a short list, I feel a little bit stuck in my marriage. I feel a little bit stuck in my career. I feel stuck in my relationship with my uncle, whatever. Yeah. And write down, why is it always the uncle? We
it's
keep
always
the
uncle. Yeah.
Everybody has that uncle. But to write down 2 or 3 small adjustments that we could try and see if it loosens our foot from the trap a little.
Well, and here's the other thing I'll say on the way out. But I'm a big proponent. People will say, well, what do you do about writer's block and that kind of thing, which is of course a version of being stuck. Yeah. And I'm a very big proponent of writing through writer's block, because I feel like sometimes it's like going up a mountain. Somebody's got to do it a couple times and get up enough momentum to get over it. But there was a time about 3 years ago where I hit a writer's block that was long term. I got stuck in a big way, and it was really frustrating, and it was discouraging. And I made the decision then to walk away from writing, but I did it for a period of time. I did it knowing I would come back to it on this date. So for me, in that particular case, it was a year.
Wow. Yeah.
I will not write for this project for a year.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that year, I will come back. So I would not suggest anybody stop what they're doing open-ended, because then it's too easy just to be quit. Then you're the former painter or the former gardener or the former
artist formerly known
former
as
parent or whatever. but if you can give yourself a qualified break and say, okay, with a quantity, I'm just going to take this week off or this month off or this 3 months, and I will come back and see what happens when I come back.
Let's just see if I miss this. Yeah. And sometimes if you don't, that can be an indicator that maybe a new pathway is headed your way.
And again, it's hard sometimes when you're known as the painter, or you're known as the poet, or you're known as the baker, or whatever. But as we had this conversation the other day, we were listening to a different podcast, not one nearly as good as this one, but
well, obviously.
But this person said to them, in a sense that I don't know what my purpose is, and this, that, and the other. And you and I were talking about later on. It's interesting because we did put a bunch of emphasis and a bunch of weight on people for a long time. You got to figure out who you are, what your purpose is, what you're supposed to be doing.
I feel like that was such like a 80s and 90s.
It was a heavy burden to put on people's
purpose-driven everything.
Yeah.
And it's just tiring.
And I said to you, I think what's interesting is that because I know you so well, if we, for whatever reason, stopped doing our own company, Pioneer Dream.
Can we do that?
We could tomorrow. It is a possibility.
It's been a rough week, kids.
Okay. So I thought, and a lot of the people in the community know us from that project, from what we do. But if we stopped doing that tomorrow, you would still be Anjanette.
Aww.
You would still be who you are, doing things that you do, and whatever expression of that is you.
Yeah,
if for whatever reason you stopped playing music tomorrow, which would be sad, but you would still be you. You would still be expressing you in some other format that's not just music. Yeah. So you are not just a musician or a singer-songwriter. You're not just a video producer. You're not just this. You're not even just a mom or just a wife.
Yeah.
But there are some things that are intrinsically you that would find an expression even if this current expression went away for a little bit. And that's the way it is for all of us. So we can't fear losing something for fear of losing our identity, even if that's how we're known by most people.
It's so, thank you. That's very sweet of you to say. Points for later.
Thank you.
But no, it's so true. I mean, you are Jay, and anyone who might be listening, you are who you were made to be. And if we can somehow know that and rest in that will be expressed, and those gifts will be used in other ways. I have as much fun, sometimes more fun, honestly, being part of our daughter's parent support group. And we took a St. Patty's cart around to all the teachers, and we had Irish coffees, not with whiskey, and Shamrock donuts. And I had some friends that helped me just to make teachers feel appreciated. And it was creative. It was a funny, fun way to help them celebrate St. Patrick's Day and bring a little joy in their day. And that, now that you mention it, is as much a creative expression as me writing a song. Yeah. And, what if I weren't able to sing anymore? Or, I couldn't play guitar. What if your hands got cramped up? I don't know.
Seems like there's a
What's
song
the equivalent as a writer? But that's right. And I think maybe even when I do feel stuck, perhaps in music, or people feel stuck in what they're maybe known for, trying to pursue who you are in another way, even in a small way, and seeing that you're still in there could help you get unstuck.
I guess what we're saying, friends, is we like you for just you being you.
Yes.
I don't know who said that, but somebody did.
I think it was Mr. Rogers.
Of course it was.
Yes, we love Mr. Rogers.
So that does bring us to the end of this Dreamers Live, episode 003. And we do mean it when we say we like you for who you are, and who you are is who you are, however you express it. So stay with that. And we will be back with another Dreamers very soon. In the meanwhile, if you so feel moved, if you feel so moved, so feel moved, just do it. Be moved, and like these podcasts, and forward these podcasts, and share these podcasts, and subscribe, and do all the stuffs that people do on the socials to support these things. If you want to email us with questions or any of that stuff, feel free, and we'll just go on from there. But we love doing this and love seeing and hearing from you, and we will talk to you soon.
We shall see you soon.
Peace
Thank
out.
you.